I am chosen. I'm chosen. Could the chosen one smoke?
Thomas Shelby said this to Irene O'Donnell in Season 2, Episode 1. He had just been told he was one decision away from death. He smiled, lit a cigarette. The IRA had blown up his pub, brought him hooded into a back room, pointed guns at him, told him that the organization that had spent the last several years fighting a war against the most powerful empire in the world had selected him specifically out of everyone in Birmingham to carry out an assassination. They had leverage. They had weapons. They had him outnumbered in an unfamiliar building after stripping him of everything. And Tommy Shelby responded by asking if the chosen one was allowed a cigarette. This is not bravado. This is not the performance of a man trying to look brave in front of a threat. This is something far more unsettling. A man who has calculated every exit in the room, understood every leverage point the people threatening him are actually holding, and concluded that they need him more than he needs to be afraid of them. Let's examine exactly what this scene reveals. The preparation Tommy did before walking in, why Irene O'Donnell's own words expose the IRA's weakness, what the boy with the irons on his legs actually communicates, and why that cigarette request is the most dangerous thing Tommy could have said. The setup. He walked into that room on purpose. To understand the scene, you have to understand how Tommy got there. The Garrison pub was destroyed at exactly 7 a.m. Nobody saw anything. The explosion was professionally executed. Bombs disguised as confetti, detonated with precision timing, structural damage complete. When Tommy and Polly walked through the wreckage and found the confetti scattered through the ash, they were looking at the signature of a professional organization with resources, patience, and a specific message to send. Tommy's response was not to send men into the Irish community to ask questions. He did not reach for guns or threats or the usual instruments of small heath power. He walked into the Black Lion, an Irish pub on the other side of Birmingham, alone, sat down, ordered a drink, and waited. He was found. A boy came to collect him. He was patted down, hooded, and walked through streets he couldn't see to a building he didn't know. He was sat in a back room with 2 armed IRA members who had just demonstrated they could destroy his property without consequence. He went willingly. He walked into a room designed to terrify him and sat down, because Tommy does not walk into rooms he hasn't already mapped. By the time he arrived at the Black Line, he had already done what Irene O'Donnell would later identify as his defining quality. He had researched his enemies. He knew, before he sat down, more about who he was meeting than they would ever expect him to. The hood was theater. The room was theater. Tommy Shelby came prepared. The first move, anger defeats fear. The scene opens with Irene O'Donnell's observation, delivered as a compliment and as a strategic assessment. Anger defeats fear. Good. Tommy had just accused them of blowing up his pub. While smiling, he walked into a room with armed IRA soldiers, accused the people holding guns of a crime against him, and smiled while doing it. Irene reads this correctly. She is not a foolish woman. She understands that a man who walks into danger smiling is either reckless or has already done the calculation, and reckless men do not run criminal operations sophisticated enough to attract the IRA's interest. What she says next is the scene's first tell, the line that reveals more about the IRA's position than anything Tommy says. In all the world, violent men are the easiest to deal with. She is telling Tommy what kind of man she needs, and by telling him what she needs, she is telling him exactly how much leverage he has. If violent men are the easiest to deal with, it means the IRA already has violent men. What they don't have, what they came to Birmingham to find, is something else, something rarer. A man with Tommy's specific combination of reach, deniability, local knowledge, and the kind of cold intelligence that lets him smile when guns are pointed at him. She opened the negotiation by describing her own need. Tommy filed it away. The treaty. Tommy controls the frame. Before Irene can establish the terms of the meeting, Tommy does something that immediately shifts the power dynamic. He turns the conversation to Irish politics. He mentions the Irish Civil War the conflict that erupted in 1922 between the pro-treaty Irish Free State forces and the anti-treaty IRA, a war fought between people who had been on the same side 12 months earlier. He notes, with deliberate casualness, that he read somewhere they had started fighting amongst themselves. He says the king offered them a peace treaty and they started a war about it. A war about peace. That's funny, don't you think? A war about peace. So, you for the treaty or against the treaty? Forgive me, I get confused. He is not confused. He knows exactly which side Irene O'Donnell is on. He knows she is pro-treaty, working in alignment with the British government, specifically with Major Campbell, and that her colleague Donnell is anti-treaty, a position that will eventually give Tommy the leverage to have Donnell removed. This moment is Tommy demonstrating, before a single threat has been made, that he understands the internal politics of the organization threatening him better than they want him to. He is saying, I have done my reading. I know who you are. And the forgive me, I get confused is the most dangerous kind of understatement. The kind that lets the other person know you are not confused at all. Donnell reaches for a weapon. Irene stops him because she recognizes what just happened. The man they brought into this room to intimidate has just casually displayed knowledge of their internal faction war. This is not a man who can be scared. This is a man who prepared. The boy. The weapon that backfired. Irene escalates. She tells Tommy he was one decision away from death and to stop smiling. Tommy stops smiling. Then he opens his mouth and delivers the most quietly devastating thing in the scene. He names her. Your name is Irene O'Donnell. You have a son at the Cherrywood Road School in Harborne. He has irons on his legs. His name is Sean. Becomes last in every race. Poor boy. The pause after poor boy is everything. Irene O'Donnell brought Tommy Shelby into a back room to tell him she knows who he is and what he values. She was prepared to demonstrate leverage over his business, his family, his reputation. She came with guns and numbers and the authority of a militant organization. Tommy came with her son's name, her son's school, her son's disability, the specific intimate fact that the boy comes last in every race. This is not a threat. Tommy never says what he will do with this information. He doesn't need to. The knowledge itself is the message. I have been in your life before you knew I was coming. I know things that require proximity, patience, and a network that reaches into your private world. And I am telling you this now, in your room, surrounded by your people, so you understand exactly what kind of man you are dealing with. Donnell moves to kill him immediately. Irene stops him because she just learned something that changes the meeting entirely. No, he researches his enemies. That's why he's being chosen. She came to leverage him. He leveraged her instead. And she is smart enough to recognize that a man with this level of preparation is more valuable to the mission, alive than dead. The cigarette, the most dangerous response. Irene tells Tommy he is chosen, that a vacancy has appeared, that he is going to fill it. This is the climax of everything the IRA has built in this scene. The pub destroyed, the intimidation, the guns, the revelation that he is trapped. Do this assignment or face consequences. This is the moment of maximum pressure, the moment designed to produce compliance. Tommy's response, I am chosen. I am chosen. Could the chosen one smoke? It is the most psychologically precise moment in the scene. He doesn't say yes. He doesn't say no. He doesn't ask what the assignment is. He doesn't express fear or anger or calculation. He reframes the entire dynamic in 6 words and asks for a cigarette. By repeating I am chosen twice, once straight, once with a note of irony, Tommy is doing 3 things simultaneously. First, he is acknowledging the IRA's framing on the surface. Fine, I am chosen. We agree on this. Second, he is subtly mocking it, the repetition turning a declaration of the IRA's power into something that sounds almost like a joke. Third, he is establishing that if he is the chosen one makes requests. The cigarette request is the negotiation. He is not begging for his life. He is not accepting the terms in fear. He is establishing, from inside the most constrained position he could be in, that he will conduct himself on his own terms even within their framework. The IRA blew up his pub, hooded him, brought him here at gunpoint, and told him he was chosen to carry out an assassination. And Thomas Shelby's instinct is to reach for a cigarette and make sure everyone in the room understands that this is who he is. Irene is not unsettled by this. She is confirmed by it. This is exactly the man they needed. The context, why the IRA needed Tommy specifically. The scene makes more sense when you understand the political situation it sits inside. It is 1922. The Irish Civil War has just begun. Irene O'Donnell is pro-treaty. She supports the Anglo-Irish Treaty that created the Irish Free State. She is working covertly with Major Campbell and the British government toward a shared goal: the assassination of a specific target who threatens the treaty's stability. Her colleague, Donald Henry, is anti-treaty, a secret IRA irregular who is in this meeting pretending to be on the same side as Irene, but who will eventually become a liability Tommy can use against the IRA's internal factions. The target for assassination is Field Marshal Henry Wilson, a real historical figure, one of the architects of partition, deeply hostile to Irish independence in any form. His killing, in the IRA's calculation, serves the pro-treaty cause by removing a British hardliner who was actively undermining the peace process. But the IRA cannot do it themselves, not directly. Not in 1922. In London, with the eyes of the British intelligence services watching every Irish nationalist in the country, they need a third party, someone with reach into British establishment circles, deniability, the ability to move across class lines, and enough self-interest to stay quiet afterward. They need someone who researches his enemies. They need Thomas Shelby. The pub was not destroyed out of spite. It was destroyed to create leverage, to give Tommy a debt, a grievance, a reason to comply that went beyond fear. They understood from their intelligence that fear alone would not be enough for a man like Tommy, so they gave him something to be angry about. And as Irene noted when he walked in smiling, anger defeats fear. Good. The trap he walked into and out of. Tommy complied with the first assignment. The same night, he found a man named Eamon Duggan, an IRA irregular, at the cooperative stables in Birmingham, and shot him in the head. He didn't do it out of fear. He did it because he was already thinking several moves ahead. By completing the first killing, Tommy passed the IRA's test and embedded himself inside their operation. He became the Irish Desk, a secret department appointed by Campbell, given access to IRA intelligence and political structure. From that position, inside the organization that had just blown up his pub and threatened his family, he began methodically dismantling their leverage over him. He researched Donald Henry, found evidence of his anti-treaty position, used it to force Campbell's hand against Donald. Within a few episodes, the man who had pointed a gun at him in that back room was dead. The IRA thought they were recruiting Thomas Shelby. Thomas Shelby was infiltrating them. The scene where Irene tells him to shut his gypsy mouth and listen to instructions is the last moment the IRA believes it is in control of this relationship. From that point forward, Tommy is playing a longer game than anyone in that room understood.